All right, welcome everybody to our second workshop Wednesday of the semester. Today we have Spectrum Health here. Her name is Sharon Green Robinette, and she is going to be talking about professionalism and the behavioral competency. So, how to make that transition from student to professional. At any point during the session, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that throughout the session, and I can stop sharing and interject at any point. Feel free to also wait till the end if you have questions that you want to have a direct answer to then. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon.
Great. Thanks so much, Courtney. And so welcome, folks. I'm glad to see you today, and I'm glad to be here. Calvin happens to be my alma mater, so not only did have I sat in your shoes or sat in your seats, but I did graduate. I ended up teaching there as well. So had spent some time there and am excited to be at Spectrum now. In any case, welcome. Today I want to talk about professionalism and the behavioral competencies. So, introduction. So what it said today is, or what the blurb said, is that life as a student and life as a professional are very different day-to-day flows. Many students leave college with limited exposure to the professional workplace, and knowing how to measure up to unspoken etiquette rules can be the key to a success in a new job environment. Are you ready to make that jump from student to professional? Well, I want to give you a little heads up and how to do that, particularly within the context of Spectrum Health. This is going to be a tough, not a tough experience. I mean, it is for everyone, but it is also going to be a little bit more nuanced if you end up in a virtual position as well, right? So lots of us haven't anticipated the way things have gone in the last couple years of, hey, I used to work in person and now I'm working at home. So I'm hoping to sort of give you some of those nuances, and in part it's talking about the behavioral competencies. Before I move forward though, I want to talk a little bit about where I work and who I work for. As of Monday, actually as of last Tuesday, February 1, I work for Michigan, by Michigan. I work for Beaumont Health, Spectrum Health, and we've had a recent integration, or we're in the process of integrating. We've just gotten the government okay. I now work for an organization that has 64,000 team members. I have 11,500 affiliated and employed physicians and advanced practice providers, so nurse practitioners or physician's assistants as my colleagues. There are 22 hospital facilities. There are 5,000 plus licensed beds. There are 7,000 plus employers that are contracted with Priority Health, our insurance company. And I work for 1.2 plus million health plan members. I work for the largest employer in Michigan as of last week. Before last week, I worked for the largest employer in West Michigan, and we had 36,000 people. So it seems so small then. Actually, it seemed like a giant city. And so what I'm talking about, or it seemed like a small city, and now I'm in a medium-sized city, if you think about it. And that's what I negotiate every day. Now, there are some real benefits from this negotiation that I do. And there are some strategies that people need to use to work in such a giant company, right? And also the company needs those strategies as well, because if you work in a small company, you can do very hands-on things, and in a large company, well, many physicians are being hands-on, the rest of us cannot be. I run the internship program. I run an apprenticeship program. So I do what's called the Career Pathways programs for information services, so technology. That is my space. That wasn't my space. I held up the humanities and social sciences and higher ed for a long time. But I'm taking those skills and I'm putting them within information services, and I still get to help people grow and develop, and I still get to work with college students, which all of those things make me happy. What is true, though, is that in order to be successful, I have to, and Spectrum Health employees have to figure out how to work together. I was talking with my interns the other day, and some of them started in January, and with that, they feel, no one said this, but I could tell that they were feeling a little odd having to introduce themselves to people around the organization so much, right? But the reality is that in an organization as big as mine, I introduce to myself all the time. I've been there 3 years. I mean, I have very close colleagues that I don't introduce myself to, but it is rare that in a week I do not have to introduce myself to people because they don't know who I am, because I don't know who they are, right? We are constantly meeting new people, and it's pretty exciting. And it's pretty dynamic. So there's never a boring moment, particularly in a pandemic in a healthcare system. At the same time, how do you get along? Well, Spectrum Health has figured out that one way to get along is essentially professionalism. And that professionalism gets articulated in what they call the behavioral competencies. So the behavior, your actions, and being competitive or competent in that, right? Like, these are the behaviors they're looking for. Now, we could go through a lot of things, but the reality is that I know that when HR, when talent acquisition, and when, for instance, our IS managers look for new employees, they're looking in part how those behavioral competencies show up in interviews. And also, this is how people are going to be sort of evaluated on immediately. Right? Because you will have skills, whether it's in HR or in IT or in accounting, you will have those skills. We depend on the organization, Calvin, to confer a degree and know some of those skills, but you're going to need to be trained on Spectrum ways and Spectrum methods. You won't know all the if you're in IT, you're not going to know all the applications that Spectrum has. Some of them are very old. Some of them are very new. You're not going to have the ability to know all of those. Similarly, if we use Workday as our HR application, so everyone who has an HR degree may or may, they may not use Workday in their day-to-day experience at school, but they're going to have to learn it. So none of those things you would be expected to know right away coming in, but how you behave, oh, that will be evaluated pretty quickly, right? And so what does that look like? So I'm going to go through these behavioral competencies. This is behavior expected of all employees. I am only going to be showing you the competencies as they're articulated for the leading self group. So if you were a leader and led other people, and by leaders at Spectrum Health right now, we're talking about people leaders. So if you are a manager or a director who has people who you supervise, you have a whole different articulation of these competencies, but they're still the same competencies we expect of everyone. It's just we'd say, hey, you'd have to figure out how to do this while leading people too. But here we're just going to go through the leading self because it would be very rare, unheard of, that anyone would be directly from a college situation would walk in without work experience in these already and into a people leading position, right? That would be very odd. So with this, we're going to articulate it for the leading self. So how you can control yourself. And if we were in an information services scenario, we would talk about how this gets worked out in tech, because we have an even more sort of what we call the career scaffolding. It's even more elaborate. Can you all throw your majors in the chat? That would help me make this a little bit more applicable. Okay, so we got geography, we got computer science. Data science and marketing analytics. Biology. Great. Okay, so I have a little bit of a sense of where you're coming from. And with that, we can move forward. Now, I will say that I believe, and I'm not just biased here, I believe that Calvin students have a little bit of a edge in these behavioral competencies. I think students coming from liberal arts education do, because much of this is similar to skills that you've been taught. And it's part of your curriculum. And so, and Courtney's right there with me on that. And I'm not just saying it to be biased. I'm finding myself having to do some teaching actually of things that I would in the organization that I would anticipate that you would not need to be taught. But I do not know that to be true all the time. I do just note that from anecdotal experience and observation. So the business acumen is one of the behavioral competencies that we look for. And business acumen shows the depth of knowledge and skill to accomplish one's job effectively, but it's not just on how one does it includes that you're keeping current on issues and practices and procedures related to your job. It does have that. So you're knowing the business through your field. So if you're in IT and you don't have any information about upcoming changes in the area of IT that you're in, you're not showing good business acumen. But as long as you keep current on those issues in your field, you take responsibility for successfully performing duties and responsibilities of the job to which you're assigned. So you have to keep focused on that. You make yourself available to others to help solve problems, and you navigate the written and unwritten rules of the system. Okay, so that's actually a skill. Now, what would you say is a written rule for the Calvin culture? What is a written rule for the Calvin culture?
One thing that's written in is probably like no alcohol, no misbehavior.
So you have a dry campus, right? And so that's a written rule. You pretty much know that, and you know that you're going to get docked if you get caught with alcohol on campus. You signed up for it, right? Like you knew that coming in. Now, how about an unwritten rule? What did you have to discover about the way things got done at Calvin when you got there? Any ideas? Be respectful. You know, that's interesting that you bring that up, is because that's sort of where I was going in my head. So now I know from when I worked there, and also my mom used to work there, so I have I had the, that generational idea of what, I got a lot of years observing Calvin employees. That's all I'm saying. I went there, my mom worked there, and I worked there myself. And it was interesting that, the be respectful piece, and this may or may not be similar to a student, although I most likely think it's true, that there would be repercussions for students. But for employees at Calvin, it was clear that you could argue pretty well on lots of things. And you could, say, I disagree with this policy, and you could have an open disagreement and make an argument about those policies. But if you ever used any sort of swear word, everything you said was discounted and thrown out. And I noted that people from the organization or who didn't grow up at Calvin or didn't have that experience for a long time walked in, because many workplaces you have a little bit of flexibility in language, and they would just have be so surprised, fair enough, that everything they had said was discounted immediately once that one thing happened. And it didn't even have to be a bad word, but it was just on the edge of what was appropriate or not. So you needed to know, because otherwise you weren't going to get anything done, that you would be ineffective. I think it's funny. I wouldn't be surprised, for instance, like another unwritten rule as an employee of Calvin was we did not, and it was a little earlier than we didn't have smartphones when I was working there, but like smiley faces and exclamation points, that did not happen in my professional work at Calvin. It absolutely happened at my professional work after Calvin. And if you didn't have exclamation points and smiley faces at different places, people would look at you a little weirdly, like you'd be really dour and not fun at all. Whereas at Calvin, if you used those things, you'd be unprofessional. So you have to figure out what those written and unwritten rules are in an organization. And that sounds silly that would, like, how you communicate that information would impact you so much with an exclamation point, but it shows that you are being part of that culture, right? And you have a sense of that. Now, another behavioral competency that's very important at Spectrum Health is embracing diversity and inclusion. And so with that, you actively seek to include colleagues from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. You help build a culture of belonging where individuals can thrive by leading with their strengths. You work to understand others' cultural values and individual uniqueness, and you recognize and address personal filter, privileges, biases, and cultural preferences. So if you can't do that, that is a red flag for folks in an interview. And certainly one would need to check one's work in those interactions. So I know someone who, if you think about how Spectrum Health has 1 point some million members in their insurance company and serves the state of Michigan now, every type of person will be coming through the doors at Spectrum Health at some point. How are you going to interact with them? Our focus, our mission is our patients and members to improve health, inspire hope, and save lives. It does not say to improve health of just a couple types of people. It does not say only save this type of life. It is do the whole thing, embrace our community, embrace our state, and do it well to make sure that all people can thrive. Now, I'm going to be honest that Spectrum Health, that's something they're working on. It is not perfect. At the same time, this is something that we get evaluated on annually, and we can be a low performer or a high performer in this. A valued employee, all those three options, but this is a skill that we get evaluated on. And so that's something important to note. It would be rare to have an interview that didn't have a diversity and equity and inclusion question on it. Similarly, living our values. We bring one's best self to work every day. You cast a strong shadow by living the organizational values and shaping team culture. Our values are compassion, collaboration, curiosity, and courage, the 4 C's. And so we also get evaluated on how well we collaborate with people. If we show curiosity and in a time of change, if we are able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and show compassion if we do the right thing, even when it's hard. And so if we're not courageous, we get docked. So that's sort of an interesting piece. But if you think about it, right, it's sort of those skills that you're being asked to create right now, that it's like, hey, what happens if you're having a challenge with a coworker? Do you talk about them? Or do you go to them and say, hey, this isn't okay? Or I don't enjoy how we're interacting. How can we deal with that? And the great thing is that if everyone's on the same page, you're not doing those sort of interactions alone. Right? It's something you work together on as a team. Taking accountability. Get results by taking personal responsibility and action for actions and team outcomes. So you understand expectation and timelines and are accountable to the project and team members for quality work. You plan proactively and seek out appropriate resources to achieve results. You possess a sense of urgency and drive to accomplish tasks, and you demonstrate accountability for both success and failure. How many of you want to go to a mediocre healthcare organization? None of us do, right? And so here this accountability comes through, where we are saying, let's do excellence. But also, I was trying to think of an example of what a great note of accountability is and why this would be important. And it came back to my experience of actually singing in a choir. And I sang all through college. And then I ended up having kids and had to not sing for quite a few years. And now I'm singing again in a choir. And it is true, those of us who've had some sort of significant ensemble experiences, particularly in a choir, know that if you do not take accountability for your mistakes, it's going to waste an amazing amount of time. So if you find out, if the director says, hey, someone's singing the wrong note, and one person says, hey, it's me, then they're done. Oh, okay, you can move forward then, you can correct that mistake. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, you're aware of it. But if you're not aware that you're not doing well, or if you're not aware that you didn't do your part in a group project, then there has to be intervention, right? And then there has to be effort. And then we have to all understand why that's happening. So it takes a lot more effort. So that accountability makes it good for everyone. And so in my team, it frequently is like, yes, I meant to get that done. I did not get that done. It will be done by Tuesday at 5. And people accept that, right? Because you've communicated it well, you understand what's going on. If you hide it, then it's much more of a problem. But that sort of bold interaction is really helpful. And you can see this in a medical situation, meaning even more, right? So I'm talking from a corporate experience, but in a clinical experience where people are, if a nurse makes a mistake, it's really helpful to know that mistake was made. A doctor makes a mistake, you can't fix it if you don't know it exists, right? So those things are important. Adapting to change demonstrates adaptability to and support for changes needed to improve personal, team, department, and organizational effectiveness. So treats change as an opportunity, adapting and responding to it with an open mind. Shows willingness to learn new ways to ensure success during and after the change, shifts and flexes approaches in response to the demands of any situation, and maintains a positive outlook and bounces back from setbacks or changes. So sort of, are you a half full or half empty person? And do you show that at work? Every change has an edge to it, right? There is good things and bad things, most likely. Can you focus on the positive? Because it's much more fun to hang around with people when they're focused on the positive. Now, does that mean you can't say, hey, this is a mistake? No, that's what courage is about. That's what accountability is about. Those are options, but it is also important to be able to flex. If you think, we heard about this integration in August. We've been told all fall that it's It's going to happen if the government says it's okay. We've been told, yep, it's probably coming. Yep, probably coming. On Monday, January 31, we said, hey, or they said, hey, it's happening. And by the way, it's happening tomorrow. And so there was a flurry of meetings, and everyone was talking about, this is what's happening, this is what we know, this is what we don't know. Very transparent of like, we do not anticipate any more leadership changes. We do anticipate these leadership changes. We do, like, everything was laid out. Now, is it going to be exactly as they lay it out? Probably not. Not exactly. This is a giant change. At the same time, it will go much better if we all look at this with a positive outlook and look for opportunities, right? And look for opportunities to collaborate with new colleagues. Enhancing collaboration. So the ability and desire to build and maintain relationships and work collaboratively with others. I've never seen any organization like this. In part, it's because of a different job that I'm in. But within the first 2 weeks, I was meeting with my whole team individually, and pretty much they were like, this is what you do. I help you with this. This is another project that you do. I also help you with that. We work together on this. At every team meeting, there's a question of, who do you need help from? Most of us have already asked each other that question, but some of us are like, oh yeah, I forgot to ask you. I need this and that. And then it gets done. We collaborate well. And it's the assumption that each department is working for the mission. And you should know a mission every time you apply for a job, because every organization has a mission. And so with that, you look at the mission, you work together to build that mission up. So the consumer focus. You engage external and internal consumers to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes in a way that provides a personalized experience for consumers. So you seek to fully understand and anticipate the needs of each consumer. You build a relationship and involve consumers at every touch point. You respond quickly to consumer needs and own finding a solution. So the patients of our doctors in our hospital and the members of our insurance company are our consumers. And our colleagues sometimes are our consumers. So for instance, if you have doctors and nurses use an electronic medical record all the time, so IT needs to help them. At that point, the doctors and nurses are the consumers of the IT functions. IT needs to hire people. So then HR, we are HR as consumers. And they need to serve us. So you're looking to figure out how you can support the people who need you. And if you do that, the organization will move forward and do better. So listening and communicating. Use all means of communications to clearly, empathetically, and concisely present information in conversation, writing, and interactions with others. I think particularly in writing, Calvin students do very well. In reading, Calvin students do very well. Sometimes working on the verbal stuff still, being able to speak out. That's not always presentations are not always Calvin students' favorites, but the arguments that they make and the critical thinking that they make is really good. So it's we get it together. So uses language, examples, and/or stories to express easily understood ideas and clearly engage others. To stay curious and actively listen, to understand, refraining from. So. Sorry, I'm apparently not showing up for my communication skills right now. So to stay curious and actively listen in order to understand. To refrain from immediate judgment. So waiting to allow people to speak their whole argument before you jump in. Accurately interprets what other people are thinking and feeling. Finds non-threatening ways to communicate to others about sensitive issues, anticipating how others will react to a situation. So really good interpersonal skills and interpersonal communication skills, very important. Innovative thinking. So apply original thinking and innovative ideas to help others see new ways of working. So come up with great ideas, keep up to date on current trends and or technology in the industry, and share best practices and tools with others. Identify novel approaches for completing work assignments more effectively and efficiently, and help others to see how to work in a better way, and try new approaches to problem solving. Come up with new ideas, figure out a new database. How do you approach a set of data that you haven't dealt with yet? Do you have a new way of addressing it? Can you sort of ferret out new information by, running a new program? All these things are really helpful and demonstrate innovative thinking. I'm almost done with all these competencies, so have some questions ready. Then, making decisions. Make the best possible decisions with available information in a timely manner. So you seek the expertise of others quickly when making difficult decisions. You show a bias towards action, and you stand by decisions made. So this is actually an interesting piece. In every organization I've been in, they have a different sense of time. So Calvin's probably the slowest. Other organizations I've been have been way too quick. So I often like that in between space. There are benefits to both. Spectrum, clearly physicians have to make decisions now. ITs, they can take a little longer, but not too long, because otherwise everything will be antiquated. It's like there are some issues about time, but here they're saying, hey, you know what? You need to go for action first. Like, have a good idea. I work with a bunch of smart people. So have good ideas and then move forward. Be innovative, be creative, go with those ideas, and keep moving. And then I think this is particularly good for Calvin students and other liberal arts students, is the learning mindset. So encourage team members to reach new levels of effectiveness through sharpening and developing talent, establish goals for self-development and growth to build on strengths and opportunities, to learn from others leading the industry and or those who are developing the standard. So learn from experts, research that information, and seek feedback regularly to understand current state and potential opportunities for development to become that best team member possible. As liberal arts students, you are learning to think, you are learning to learn, and those are skills that are going to stand you in very good stead. So all of those things don't sound like etiquette, right? You can look up what to wear to an informational interview. I think you should, by the way, do that. I think you should look up what to wear on your first day of the job. I think you should know to ask that question of your manager, if that's who hired you. Like, hey, great, you just gave me an offer. We just settled a contract. We can move forward. What's the culture for clothes? You should know that. And now you do, because I just told you. But each organization is going to be a little different, right? You're not going to have that. And then you may end up working from home, like something big might happen, and you may have been in the office for years and years and years, and suddenly you're working from home. And suddenly your clothing budget shrinks to nothing for professional clothing, right? And you suddenly need warmer slippers because you're at home all the day. All these things change, but you need to know to ask those sorts of questions. And you can look up those questions because you have the skills to quickly say, what questions should I ask in an informational interview? What questions should I ask in a formal interview? What questions, before an interview, make sure to Google the questions, top 20 behavioral questions in an interview asked these days, because chances are HR did that too when they created the interview questions. So you have those skills and you can prepare, but once you get in the job, it's there's probably, depending on the industry, more flexibility about some of those behaviors. But of like, okay, if everyone's wearing t-shirts on Friday, then you can do that. Okay, that's fine. And that might be on Wednesdays if you pay $5. You never know. Those sorts of things you can learn by the culture, but you need to be able to sort of use your mind and analyze what's going on. You need to look at the foundational documents. So this is a public document for us, these behavioral competencies. You need to find these documents in an organization and then see how you can really use them to your benefit and the organization's benefit. Any questions? That was a long monologue and I'm sorry about that. Any questions?
Oh, yeah, I guess I have a question. So with the merge going on and like everything kind of coming together, I'm guessing for when you do like if you did apply to Spectrum and you have all these new applicants coming in, and especially as a Calvin student, what would you say the best way is to stand out amongst like other applicants interviewing for, let's say, like a marketing position?
Well, the need is going to be just as great or more. So I don't, and right now we have a lot of openings. So I would not worry about the merger impacting it. I'm sure there will be impacts. I don't know what they are yet, but I wouldn't spend any time worrying about it. Spectrum has always gotten a ridiculous amount of applications for every position. I think the year I got the job is they hired, I think this is true, they hired 2,000, 3,000 people and 100,000 people applied. So it's not, frequently there are 700 applications for my summer intern positions. Not each one, but there are a lot of applications. So what I would say is for an entry-level position, one, I would make sure you're applying for an entry-level position. So for instance, in the corporate space, the term associate should be by the job. And I'm trying, that's absolutely true for technology. I'm trying to think in terms of other places. I think that's true, but if you look at the job description, it would say under direct supervision for an entry-level position. With that, I would make sure you're applying for the right jobs. Because like it's, so for instance, in computer science, application development analyst is a job that we frequently have. If you just see application development analyst, that's an intermediate role. You need to see an application development analyst associate, and that's an entry-level role. Another way to get at that information is by looking at the preferred and the required pieces on the job description. So if they say preferred BA or preferred related employment, that's fine. Presumably, I mean, if you don't have everything, you're good to go. If they do say required employment in the field, you need some employment in the field. And so, and an internship can be that. It doesn't have to be, a full-time position somewhere, but do know that that could be the case, that they are looking for someone with a little more experience. Then I would say, know what Spectrum Health is. Know the mission, know the vision. Even though it's merging, it's not going to change that much. I mean, it does change, but when I started, the mission, so 3 years ago, improving health of the communities we serve. That was the mission. And then the next mission was improving health, inspiring hope, saving lives. Different, but you sort of know what Spectrum does. And so you want to work for a nonprofit healthcare industry you want to work for a nonprofit in healthcare in order to care for your region and to make a real life impact on your community members. And so if you don't know that that's what Spectrum Health is about, it's going to be hard to get in there, even in that interview setting. Or, you know, in HR screening. The great thing about Spectrum Health is that they don't use computers to go through your resumes. Someone will read it. So with that, I also would say don't apply to everything. So if I have 30 positions of an internship open, they're all posted very differently. Don't tell me you want to, or don't tell the talent acquisition person that you want to both be a developer and then also work in the office of the CIO and the communication to development team. So developer is a coder where you're writing code, right? Don't say you want to do communications and do coding, because we're going to say, no, you don't. You want to do one or the other. Thanks, Courtney. And with that, it's like, okay, so, but feel free if there are 6 that seem like they are good fits for you, feel free to apply to those that make sense and to apply to multiple. And do not be afraid to get rejected and then apply again. I even interviewed on my current team and didn't get a job. And then they called me back for this one. Right. So you, this is a much better job for me. But keep trying. And one no from an organization like Spectrum is not a no. It's like, wow, there's so many opportunities there that they're, please take them. So keep applying. If you are passionate about the mission, keep applying. Also get an internship. I have to say that, but please do. I am currently working to we've established a fall internship program, and I'm currently working to collect applications for that fall internship program now. Well, they haven't been posted yet, but I will get to Courtney connection. I'm sorry, I don't have it plugged up right now here, but I will get to Courtney a connection on how to sign up for a form that will let you know when I post those positions. And actually, I can probably get that in about 2 seconds here.
All right, so while she's doing that, I really want to say really quick, thank you so much for presenting. I'm going to end the recorded session, but we can stay on for a few minutes after that.
Okay.